Hi, my name is John Kellogg. I'm the director of Break the Cycle Global. So excited to share a bit of adventure with you that I've been on for the last 5 years. Want to share a little vision and mission and about our organization with the hopes that you may consider joining us in this adventure. It was in March of 2013, almost 5 years ago now, that my father passed away quite unexpectedly. He had started a ministry, Kingdom Living Now, that had focused really in East Africa and would gather together groups of about 30 pastors and spiritual leaders in remote locations and teach them and encourage them. After he passed away, the directors came to me, or the board came to me and said, John, unless you step in as director right now, we're going to need to dissolve the ministry. So my wife and I prayed about it and felt like, in fact, we should do that. I should step in. And so I began to travel to Kenya in 2013 and asking the Lord in East Africa, Kenya and Uganda primarily, what would you have as vision and mission? And so it felt like very clearly he said the vision is that Break the Cycle Global be a conduit to the nations of hope and healing, spirit, soul, and body. That the mission would be to advance the kingdom of God with a small footprint and sustainable solutions. So how that has worked out in these last 5 years is what I'd like to share with you. As I continued to ask clarification, I felt like he said that there were 4 locations to begin with, that he wanted to establish a kingdom of God culture where there was currently a poverty culture that existed. So one of those locations is Mathare, a very large slum in Nairobi, and then 3 other locations throughout East Africa that are in remote villages or marginalized tribes. And so we began to work with those groups, and the Lord said, breathe destiny and purpose into the 3 to 5-year-olds, because in 15 years they'll be the 18 to 20-year-olds, and they will change the culture from the inside out. So we've been developing a curriculum that we could use as we began to develop schools. And so we use a Montessori method to train the children, but we're also very intentionally beginning to teach them about destiny and purpose, which really deals with identity. So as they grow up in those communities, they'll really be able to bring life and establish the kingdom of God. We felt like establishing the kingdom, to clarify also, is not, you can't just do that by going and having a 1 to 3 day crusade or healing miracle conference. Those things are good, but advancing the kingdom of God is really about community. It's really about relationship. And so the real need is to go in to community and say, hey, here's what the kingdom of God looks like, and that's spiritually, physically, right? Spirit, soul, and body. So one is spiritual training, that's powerful. But also, as you go into communities that have no water, no power, no septic system or no latrines, little food, not developed, there's a need from a practical standpoint to help lift those communities up. And you don't do that by going and doing something to them. You go by going low and building relationship with them, and it's amazing how you end up being invited into a conversation about how they can increase and improve their communities. So the way we begin that is by starting a school with them. Every community, even though poor, has something they can give and needs to be a part and have ownership in whatever we do to help. The other thing is that we felt very strongly that we were to develop the East Africans themselves. So the whole organization outside of myself is East African and live in East Africa. So that's very powerful, because the challenge of my being white and from the U.S. is it brings a lot of connotation, a lot of expectation with it that's different than East Africans delivering the same message. So our primary goal is to support what the Lord's doing there. So back to the communities, we work with the schools, we're breathing that destiny and purpose into the 3 to 5-year-olds. But then we're also working to bring understanding in things like clean water, better sanitation. You know, I have a friend there who, when I went back to visit one time, he came by the manada where I was staying, and he was all doubled over in pain, and he said that his urine was bloody, and he had walked 16 miles to the closest medical clinic and back. And when he was there, they diagnosed the obvious, that he was in advanced typhoid, which kills a lot of people in this area. And but they had no medication for him. So we prayed for him. And the next morning he said, John, my urine's clear and my stomach doesn't hurt. And I checked with him every day for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and he was healed. It was awesome. But I feel like equally as powerful of a miracle would be if he'd have never had typhoid, if malaria wasn't so predominant in killing the kids and the older folks in that area, if we could teach them how, through better sanitation and just having clean water, that they could avoid much of the diseases that they're experiencing. As well as, from a practical standpoint, yes, putting a well in a community is helpful, but it needs to be done in conjunction with the community. They need to own it. But part of the reason for that is if you have to travel miles to get 5 gallons of water, which weighs almost 50 pounds, and you carry that all the way back home, and that's for a family of 10. You know, how much of that is really going to go into bathing or washing, and how clean are dishes afterwards? And so those things that really then end up contributing to the overall disease in that community. So we have an awesome opportunity to raise up communities of light. We have invitations now into these communities to help build infrastructure and to change the way people are living. I believe that's advancing the kingdom of God. Here's the power in that. You know, as you look forward, 2050, by that year, the population is going to be exploding. The fastest growth is going to be in some of the areas that we're working. The challenge is the infrastructure there right now doesn't even support the current population. Obviously, what that does is creates a greater void, more areas of darkness, and more opportunity for the forces that are advancing, which are, as we know, ISIS and radical Islam is moving from the Middle East down into Africa, into East Africa. Kenya is primarily, the Al-Shabaab is the group that is predominant there. But these groups look for that's a ripe environment for them to succeed and to grow their kingdom, advance their kingdom. So we believe that by going and planting these little communities of light and advancing the kingdom of God into these areas, that it provides then areas that darkness just can't come into. But more than that, more than defensively, it creates an offensive posture as they're developed and can then begin to send out messengers of light into other areas to continue to expand and grow this ministry throughout East Africa. Now we become in an offensive posture, pushing away the darkness. So very excited about what the Lord's doing, but it's a vision much bigger than me and much greater than our current organization. So I'm looking for partnerships, for people that want to be a part of the adventure. I need to start a council of business leaders, thought leaders that can help as we look at developing businesses in these communities. And also, obviously, resource. Resource is a big opportunity now, as we feel like we've really settled on a great process of establishing schools, what that looks like, how to work with local communities, that we can begin to duplicate throughout East Africa, but right now in 4 to get those settled and good. So if you would, please, I'd love to have some coffee with you or speak with you, answer the questions that you might have, and let's go together, be a part of this adventure, and let's bring the kingdom, let's advance the kingdom of God in East Africa. Thanks. God bless.